The straw dummies dressed in Dynamite Bay pirate garb, the hats and coats taken from the original crew, still standing stiffly by the empty gun ports. The ruse brought the escaping team vital extra seconds. It was only moments later that someone from the invading warfleet spotted the oncoming attack from Cervantes and Nomad, and the shrill clamour of alarm rang out loudly through the morning air, spreading from ship to ship up the line like an ongoing echo. At that instant, Corey and Hamish split their attack, going for the centre two ships in the line, their tense faces set in stone as they swiftly bore down upon their foes, the bows of their ships knifing through the water like great white sharks bolting in for the kill. Following out from behind the islands and the slick wakes of the lead ships came the twin lines of the Cervantes fleet at spaces of less than 20 metres. Forming up behind Cervantes rode Nedoc, Condor, Bluefin and Monica Kay. Peeling out behind Nomad came Panalora Star, Charlin, Sea Prophet and Rosa. The first response from the Dynamite Bay ships was the shouted order to raise cannon flaps. All along the flank of the ships, the little square trapdoors of the gun ports flew up and were quickly fastened. Then came the order to advance guns, and the thickly muscled backs and arms of the gun crews heaved at the cannon pull ropes to send rows of dark black nozzles poking out aggressively through the apertures. Cervantes and Nomad were well within range when their crews heard the bellowed order to give fire. At once, the cannons of the big Dynamite Bay ships, but the gunners had been unnerved by the surprise flank attack bearing down on them. At once, the cannons of the big Dynamite Bay ships opened fire, but the gunners had been unnerved by the surprise flank attack bearing down on them at high speed and failed to take proper aim in the rush. Huge clouds of smoke billowed from the ship's sides and belching tongues of flame to fall quickly astern as the ship's swift passage. Huge clouds of smoke billowed from the ship's sides on belching tongues of flame to fall quickly astern in the ship's swift passage. But the cannonballs whistled wide, missing the fast-coming attackers by a long mark. Sudden fountains of blue-white water began to shoot up from the calm sea into the morning sky, although none of them close enough to splash or even dampen the onrushing attack craft. More wild cannon fire rent the morning air until the captured corsair at last slammed into the side of the third ship on the line. A thunderous explosion ripped from the heart of the booby-trapped corsair and blew it to smithereens. An instant later, the magazine of the now crippled man warship took fire and exploded. A great orange ball of flame violently mushroomed out from amidships, curling in beneath itself and turning into thick black smoke as it rose ever higher. Moments later, the fiercely burning wreck became surrounded by a million tiny splashes as the shattered debris fell back into the sea. Still on and on the Cervantes ships charged through the barrage of fire until they could see the terrified expressions on the sweat-grimed faces of the Dynamite Bay gunners. Corey barked the order to come about just moments before they themselves rammed into the flank of the centre ship in the line, and as Cervantes swung about, her smaller guns spoke in devastating reply at point-blank cannonade. Not a single shot missed its mark, the light cannon at such close range, punching jagged holes through the enemy hulls and smashing a devastating path through the ship's vital interior. They passed close enough for Corey and his crew to toss a series of grenades up and over the gunwale. A moment later came the sharp explosions, followed at once by the cries of the wounded and dying strewn about the fiercely burning deck. Hamish executed the exact same manoeuvre, only turning his ship to the south, thereby widening the split of the lead attack vessels to add further confusion to the faltering. More cannon volleys spat sparks and flame from the fast-turning Nomad, the full broadside slamming home at once the targeted ship rolled heavily in the water, losing all forward thrust and taking seawater at a furious rate as she quickly slowed to a standstill. Another handful of grenades trailed spitting wisps of burning fusewick as they arced up over the gunwales the instant the attack craft swung close by, and the resulting series of explosions devastated the crews on deck, leaving bloody and smoky carnage in their wake. The other Cervantes ships followed close in twin lines behind their leaders, neatly executing the same tactics of rushing head-on at their foes before abruptly peeling away at the very last minute. They came in so close as to be beneath the line of fire from the biggie ship's guns, and therefore safe from the heavy cannons that continued to erratically blaze into an empty sea where the oncoming vessels had just passed. Great fountains of seawater hissing up under the heavy punch of the cannon fire, but not yet so much as a splinter broken away from a single Cervantes ship. Another broadside at point-blank range roared out in thunderous rebuke, and another Dynamite Bay man-of-war ship wallowed crippled and dying. 5 ships smashed in as many minutes, effectively taking the central core out of the line, and now the others were beginning to break formation to round on their surprise attackers. No sooner had they done so than the reserves of the Cervantes fleet, Iberica and Millennium, rounded the thirsty point to engage the enemy on both fronts. A hearty cheer went up from the Cervantes ships to have sprung the attack, Corey yelling out to Hamish to turn about, while all crews worked furiously at reloading the cannon. Urgently they swung tight for another attack run, increasingly more fountains of sweet seawater rearing up behind and about them as they turned. Bloodbeard screamed in livid rage at the shocking loss of his prize ships, and roughly knocking the helmsman's side, swung the big wheel with all of his might to port in the hope of rounding the 2 Cervantes attack ships. His face a mask of savage fury and frustration at this wholly unexpected turn of events. As sails strained into the wind, he yacked the wheel hard to further tighten the turn, only to hear the ripping of sailcloth and snapping of ropes as the ship went sluggish and unresponsive to his frantic and heavy-handed steering. He roared like a wounded bull and commanded his stern guns to fire before the attack vessels could swing at his port quarter. The gunners had a good chance of taking out the oncoming 2 Cervantes ships, and as Bloodbeard's great war galleon wallowed and slowed in the turn owing to the uselessly flapping sails, they made their aims tight and true. "Fire, you worthless swine!" screamed Bloodbeard at his gunners in a worsening fit of rage, his bellowing roar almost as loud as the flame-belching cannon coming from all around. The moment the gunners put flaming torch to Fusewick, they were killed instantly. The guns exploded. More of Matthew's handiwork taking deadly effect. Charging the Cervantes Condor and Blue Fin and swung beneath the falling debris of the smashed guns and flying pieces of wood to discharge broadsides in quick succession into the port of its lead ship. All at once, a massive hole appeared as though some voracious sea took a huge bite from the quarter hull. Great volumes of sea flowed into the heart of the mortally wounded vessel. At first, she began to yaw and wallow like a wounded animal caught in a boggy swamp, the rising bowsprit seeming like a blunted paw clawing across the sky. She then commenced to go down quickly by the stern. Bloodbeard still screamed in rage through the dense smoke, swirling about the back-tilting bridge, his eyes ablaze and as red as his beard. But the few terrified remnants of his crew to have survived the exploding guns were now jumping overboard. The Cervantes ships, Iberica and Millennium, had grounded 30 on the starboard side of the remaining 3 Dynamite Bay fleet, while the others kept up an unrelenting offensive at their port quarters and shoulders. The remaining men of war, now in a desperate but hopelessly uncoordinated flight to escape the fire attack on the town. Their big cannons continually boomed out at the fast-moving attackers, but uncontrolled panic saw little chance of a hit, and the great foaming spouts of water rising into the air from vacant patches of sea bore ongoing testimony to the panicked hysteria of the gunners. The Cervantes crews harried the last of the invaders like a pack of hunting dogs, bringing down a lumbering beast of prey, and before the morning sun was halfway to its zenith, the last of the invading dynamite fleet had been fully dispatched to the bottom of the ocean. It had been a complete and utter rout. Victory was absolute. The Cervantes crews looked about in the terrible silence that abruptly descended as the last echoes of cannon fire bounced away across the water, their sweat and smoke-grimed faces looking stunned and almost as though in shock at the swift and devastating defeat they had inflicted upon their enemy. For a few moments no one spoke a word, the ships drifting aimlessly as everyone stared wide-eyed and open-mouthed about the ocean's surface, now littered with floating debris and drifting wisps of smoke. And as one voice the mighty cheer went up from all surviving ships. It was the unmistakable sound of total victory. There were no known survivors from the Dynamite Bay pirate fleet. The shocking noise and commotion of the battle, accompanied by so much hot blood running free in the water, summoned the huge predators of the sea, and those who escaped the fiery ravages of battle and jumped overboard were quickly overtaken and devoured. The Cervantes crews later agreed it seemed a fitting end to such evil men. Some, however, had caught a fleeting glimpse through the billowing smoke of Bloodbeard scrambling into a rowboat and making for the beach alone during the final distraction and confusion of the ferocious battle. A quick search after the Cervantes ships had once again been secured at their moorings in Ronsard Bay soon found the abandoned lighter at the northern end of the Pinnacle's desert beach. The heavy footprints leading up into the desert gave clear indication that there had been but a sole survivor. For a long time after the battle, sentries were posted and everyone kept a keen lookout, while numerous search parties set out on hunting expeditions to track him down, but he was never found. As the years rolled by, it was assumed, as much as hoped, that he had perished somewhere in the rambling vastness of the Pinnacle's desert. For many years, however, the fact that he was known to have escaped and might possibly be lurking in the deeper shadows of the night made the pirates of Cervantes guard their treasure with even greater care. For as the ghost keeper had rightly pointed out, the enemies of truth and important knowledge are never far away and remain ready to strike at any moment. No one ever laid eyes on the villainous Bloodbeard again, but the priceless treasure is now freely shared among all those with open minds and caring hearts. And so it came to pass, just as the keeper had predicted, that a new and golden age of knowledge and truth was born in the heart of Western Australia. The amazing secret of its birth still kept in the little seaside town of Cervantes.